It's funny how we tell stories about animals. We think we're talking about them, but most of the time, we're really just talking about ourselves. The stories we tell are like a funhouse mirror, reflecting our own society, our own anxieties, our own values. And if you look back at the 18th century, well, the reflection you see when they talked about cats is really, really weird. I mean, listen to this. Inbred malice, a false nature. This isn't from some creepy horror story. This was a totally normal, almost scientific description of a house cat back then. It is a million miles away from the cute cat videos that basically run the internet today. So you have to wonder, what on earth was going on?
For them, the cat was seen as a faithless domestic. Think about that phrase. It means an animal you keep around, but you can't trust. It's only there to do a job, catch mice, and that's it. It's a viewpoint so completely alien to us now, it's like a historical puzzle we have to piece together.
And the list of complaints just goes on and on. Cats weren't just disloyal, they were outright thieves, they were manipulative flatterers, you couldn't even train them properly. My favorite has to be this one. They have equivocal eyes and a false heart. Basically, they saw them as these tiny, furry con artists who were just squatting in your house.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why all this negativity, this deep-seated distrust? Were cats back then just jerks? No, of course not. The answer isn't in the animal at all. It's in the stories people were telling, and more importantly, the job those stories had to do. See, to get the 18th century cat, you first have to get how stories work. We think of them as just entertainment, right? Especially stories for kids. But they are so much more than that. They're like the instruction manuals for society, teaching everyone the rules, what's a value, how to act, what to believe. There's a formal word for this, ideology. But a better way to think about it is like the invisible software that runs a culture. And stories? Stories are the code. They package up all of society's beliefs about work, money, gender, everything. And they install it in our brains so quietly, we don't even realize it's happening. And this gets super detailed, right down to the grammar. The very words a story uses, the way it talks about what you should do or what you want to do, all of that subtly steers how you see the world. It's not just the plot, it's the very language itself that's doing the work. A perfect example is Cinderella. The story never comes right out and says, hey kids, the lesson here is that good girls should be passive and just wait for a prince to save them. But what happens? Cinderella is rewarded for her passivity. And that sends the exact same message, that exact ideology, loud and clear. And look, this isn't just some academic theory. Writers and publishers knew what they were doing. For centuries, they've been creating stories with specific goals in mind, to teach social principles, to boost self-confidence, even to make kids, develop a fondness for work. The bottom line is stories have a job. Okay, so with that framework in mind, let's go back to our cat. There was this really popular and really strange 18th century story called The Adventures of a Cat. And in this story, the cat isn't really a character. It's more like a tool for criticizing society. So this cat gets passed around London from one owner to the next, and every stop on its journey just happens to expose how awful and corrupt that part of society is. It goes from a greedy jeweler to a nobleman's materialistic mistress to a hypocritical bishop to a sleazy mayor. The cat's so-called faithless and selfish nature is the perfect mirror for the humans it lives with. And the story is just savage. At one point, a hardworking, honest priest who served for 20 years asked the bishop for a promotion. And the bishop's response is basically, yeah, and what's in it for me? The cat is just sitting there silently watching this whole rotten human world unfold. But, and this is where it gets really fascinating. At the exact same time that this cynical, faithless cat story is popular, there's another, completely opposite cat story that is an absolute blockbuster. The Tale of Dick Whittington and His Cat. So you've got these two cats living in the public imagination at the same time. On one side, the cat is a malicious thief, a symbol of everything wild and untrustworthy. But on the other side, it's a hero's sidekick, a valuable commodity, the ticket to a massive fortune and a whole new life. How can both of these be true at once? Well, here's the thing. It doesn't really matter that the Dick Whittington story is a total myth. What matters is that people wanted to believe it. It was this powerful social fantasy in an age obsessed with trade and making money. It was the dream that anyone, even a poor orphan, could get rich with one lucky asset, like, say, a really good Mauser and a rat-infested kingdom. So let's bring it all back home. The 18th century used the cat like a screen. They projected all their fears about social corruption onto it, and at the same time, they projected their biggest fantasies about getting rich quick. It tells us a whole lot about them and not much about cats, which, of course, makes you think, what about us?
I love this quote. It just perfectly captures that 18th century view. A cat had a job, a purpose, practically assigned by heaven itself. A cat was supposed to be a guardian. But they were guardians of physical stuff. Their entire value was tied to protecting your pantry from mice, your property from pests. All their stories, whether about the evil, thieving cat or the heroic, money-making cat, were all about this very tangible economic role. Okay, but our cats don't guard our larders anymore. Most of them are, let's be honest, pretty useless in a practical sense. We tell stories about them being our companions, our emotional support. We share pictures of them being lazy and goofy. They've gone from guarding our property to guarding, what? Our emotional well-being? Our defense against loneliness? The stories we tell about our cats today are just as revealing as those from 300 years ago, which leaves us with a final question. What do our cat stories say about us?